I hope you enjoyed the beautiful music while you read through chapter 5. You know, to be exposed to God's word is such a blessing, and it is so necessary. Verse 1. Now it happened on the third day that Esther put on her royal robes. Can you see it? Oh, beautiful. And stood in the inner court of the king's palace, across from the king's house, while the king sat in his royal throne in the royal palace, facing the entrance of the house. You know, when I walked over the ruins, I could imagine this. She's standing there. Esther and the maidens, who may also have been Jews, had eaten nothing for some time. They were so hungry and thirsty. What a story. Can you see the ladies and Esther? While fasting, Esther wore sackcloth and ashes. Ooh, what a contrast because what she wore before. But this she now exchanged for the splendor of her royal attire. Leaving the women's apartment of the palace area, she passed through the garden, and the Persian gardens with one of the most beautiful gardens in the world, started by Cyrus. He started gardens. Leaving the woman's apartment to the palace area, she passed through the garden, probably surrounding the royal hall, and entered the court, immediately in front of the open throne hall. Sure. And I think, while she'd walked through that garden, I visited some of the Persian gardens, but it's so beautiful, beautiful, world famous. And maybe she prayed, maybe she cried as she walked through the garden, God, please help me. And here she was. This is the site. You're looking at the ruins where all this happened. And when you're there, you can put this stuff in perspective. Now it's only ruins. But this is where she walked. You know, I'm fascinated through archaeology. So Darius had built the upper Dharma here, that throne room. And his son Xerxes was here, Esther was here. And then Nehemiah was here. And it's marvelous to read the history and see it with your own eyes. Taking up a position right here, directly in front of the throne. But at a distance from it, with the object of attracting the king's attention, Esther awaited his pleasure. What is he going to do? Can you see it? It happened here. She knew that at the hour of her coming, he would be seated upon the throne and could not fail to see her. She was clever. She wanted to expose herself to the king. She was not invited, so she had to make plans. She knew that at the hour of his coming, he would be seated in his throne and could not fail to see her. Oh God, please, let him see me. Please, let him see me. Facing the entrance of the house, that is opposite the entrance to the hall, the throne which faced the main entrance was on an elevated platform. Seated on his throne, the king would therefore command a view of the entrance and court beyond. Through the middle avenue of the columns. There she is, there she is. She's waiting for him to come. When he saw Queen Esther, she's as pretty as always, standing in the court. There she stands. He was pleased with her and held out to her the gold scepter that was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. You know, God, fellow sinner, also holds out the golden scepter of his forgiveness. If you want to get rid of your guilt feelings, go in faith and touch the scepter of his grace. I love the story. Extension indicated royal favor when he did this. And God is always doing this, giving us the opportunity to come and touch the scepter of his forgiveness. Touching the scepter signified acknowledgement of the favor displayed. She knew that when she touches that scepter, she's got the favor of the king. And when you touch God's scepter, you've got favor with the King of Kings. By entering the inner court, Esther had already violated the law. Assurers must have recognized that only a pressing emergency would have led Esther to approach the throne unsummoned. What was going on? She's disobeying the palace rules. What's going on? What a story. Then the king asked, "What is it, Queen Esther?" "Sweetheart, what is your request?" He was in the right mood. God is always in the right mood when we come to ask him for forgiveness. Even up to half the kingdom, it will be given you. You know, she expected death. And this is what she finds. And sometimes we see God in a bad light. He's not in a bad light, in a bad mood, never. He's always there to help us. "If it pleases the king," replied Esther, "let the king, together with Haman, come today, that very day, to a banquet I've prepared for him." "Bring Haman at once," the king said, "so that we may do what Esther asks." So the king and Haman went to the banquet Esther had prepared. Whew, I think there were flowers and decorations. It must have been a beautiful setting. She was a clever girl. King and queen dined separately. But for the queen to invite another male guest in addition to the king was most unusual. Xerxes had many thoughts going through his head. Assuerus, or Xerxes, probably remembered Vashti's refusal to attend his banquet. The unusual nature of Esther's invitation, together with the fact that it was presented in person, must have startled and intrigued the king. He had several hours to let his regal curiosity run wild and become stronger. What's happening here? Sometimes we also wonder what's happening here. Assuerus understood, of course, that it was not for the mere pleasure of entertaining him and his prime minister at the banquet. No, it wasn't this. He said to himself, no, what could it be? By approaching his throne unsummoned, Esther had taken a life-threatening risk. He said this to himself. She had risked her life by approaching his throne unsummoned. What is going on in my wife's mind? As they were drinking wine, the king again asked Esther, "Sweetheart, tell me your petition. What do you want to ask me?" "It will be given you. But I'm curious. Speak to me. And what is your request?" "Even up to the half of my kingdom, it will be granted." Esther replied, "My petition and my request is this. If the king regards me with favor," and he is doing it right now, "and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet. I will prepare for them. Then I will answer the king's question." Brilliant, brilliant. Esther, you're doing well. Esther gained much by delaying another day to state her request. You know, God inspired her to do this. Most of all, perhaps, Assuerus would doubtless be impressed that her appeal was not only a life and death matter to her personally, implied by her sudden appearance before him earlier that day, but that it was a deliberate, considerate appeal and not a momentary impulse. My wife thought a long time about this, and God was working. Furthermore, delay would heighten the king's curiosity. You know, you women are so clever. And thus prepare him the more thoroughly for what would, under any circumstances, come as a great shock. As for Esther, the delay would mean time in which to pray and weigh carefully how she should present her appeal. She needed to gather her thoughts before speaking. And one day in heaven, I'm going to ask her about this period in her life. Though Esther knew it not yet, Providence, God, ordained the delay to prepare the mind of the king. This is exactly what was to happen. You know, if she said to him, "King, you know, I'm a Jew, and Haman influenced you to kill all our Jews, all of us." No, that would not have happened. This was beautiful. God inspired her exactly what to do. Haman plans to hang Mordecai. Haman went out that day, happy and in high spirits. Man, he's a big shot now. But when he saw Mordecai, oh no, I hate this man. When he saw Mordecai at the king's gate and observed that he neither rose nor showed fear in his presence, he was filled with rage against Mordecai. Haman plans to hang Mordecai. Being condemned to death by Haman's decree, Mordecai boldly defied Haman, the perpetrator of crime. His presence in the king's gate is evidence that he no longer wore sackcloth. He was not allowed to do it there, as he had 2 days before. Without doubt, he knew of Esther's favorable acceptance by the king and believed that her plan would be crowned with success. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself. He wanted to kill him that day, and went home, and he sent and called for his friends and his wife, Zeresh. Though passionately angry at Mordecai personally, Haman considered it beneath his dignity to notice him. Can you see his body language? Haman boasted to them about his vast wealth, his many sons, and all the ways the king had honored him and how it elevated him above the other nobles and officials. He was bragging there, man. Hey, I'm so important. Are you aware of it? Accordingly, chapter 9, 7 to 10, Haman had 10 sons. He was so proud of them. 10. To be father of many sons was accounted highly honorable by the Persians as by other Orientals. I don't know how many sons you've got. I've got only one daughter. But be proud of your sons. And that's not all. Haman added, I'm the only person Queen Esther invited to accompany the king to the banquet she gave. What do you think of this? And she has invited me along with the king tomorrow. Wow, I'm looking forward to that wonderful experience. And she is a beautiful person. And I'll be with her in her company. But all this gives me no satisfaction as long as I see that Jew Mordecai sitting at the king's gate. Haman had not learned the wisdom of setting pleasure against pain, joy against sorrow, satisfaction against annoyance. Nor had he taught himself to look upon the vexations and trials of life as blessings in disguise. How do you cope with disappointments in life? These runes say that despite his seeming self-control, and although he was the prime minister of the Persian Empire, his nature was little better than that of a savage. Serious words. Worldly greatness is little proof of either greatness or goodness of soul. I want to repeat this. Maybe you're a celebrity. Worldly greatness is little proof of either greatness or goodness of soul. His wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, have a pole set up, man, reaching to a height of 50 cubits. Everybody will see it. And ask the king in the morning to have Mordecai impaled on it. Then go with the king to the banquet and enjoy yourself. This suggestion delighted Haman. And he had the pole set up. I'm going to hang this chap today. The height of the gallows was probably for the purpose of making an execution of Mordecai visible throughout the city. They will all see that man. So please honor me, otherwise I'll put you on the gallows as well, he told the people. Friends of Haman believed that upon the chief minister's request, the immediate killing of one Jew would be allowed. Yeah, just like this, and he'll be gone. He'll be gone. Next time, chapter 6. Ahasuerus reading in the Chronicles of the good service done by Mordecai takes care of his reward. Haman, coming to sue Mordecai, might be hanged, and unawares gives counsel that he might do him honor. And then verse 12, complaining of his misfortune, his friends tell him of his final destiny. Father in heaven, help us not to envy people. Help us not to be nasty to people. What we want to do to them may happen to us. And thank you for the Bible, your word. Help us to allow you to write this on the hearts of our hearts. And help us to prepare for what is going to happen in future. Help us to prepare today for the crises of tomorrow. Thank you for blessing us with your wonderful word. In Jesus Christ. Amen.